on buses. Not just school children, but actual passenger buses. Since that that tragic accident out in Navan where a number of school kids were killed, there has been a serious clampdown. Legislation has been brought forward. As you say, you know it yourself now, if you had kids trying to mind one or two in the back of a car, imagine trying to mind 15 or 20 in a bus. It's an impossible feat. I suspect there's more of a compliance with school children wearing seatbelts in buses than adults. Whatever it is, adults will not put a seatbelt on them inside the bus. And unfortunately, the legislation states clearly it's the driver's responsibility.
Eamon and Mick decide to pull over another bus. This time, a bus carrying adults.
We shall see if the children are better than the adults.
What we're going to do is we're just going to get on your bus and check to see how many of your passengers are wearing safety belts.
It turns out many passengers are not wearing their seatbelts.
The majority of them were not wearing their safety belts.
The driver accepts that many of his passengers are not wearing seatbelts. Eamon gives him a piece of advice.
You can see the majority of them weren't wearing them. Okay, you're on a motorway here, which is a very high-speed road. You know what I mean? Even though you're governed at 80 kilometres, it's still a high-speed road. The rest of the vehicles on the road are travelling faster than you. So if anything happens with you in your bus, you know, there's going to be consequences. Whether the bus loses control or whatever. Okay, and pass it on to your company. Thanks.
Well, if there was an accident, at least if you're strapped in, you'll stay in your seat. Like, there's a vast amount of space inside in a coach to be thrown around. There isn't an awful lot of protection, bar a seatbelt.
Dundalk. It's late on a Sunday night. Gardaí Damien Fanning and Frida McCaig have just got a call out. Dundalk's Garda station have received calls complaining of the way a car is being driven round town, with passengers shouting from the windows.
A person had rang into the station about dangerous driving, by-racer type driving in the town, driving in excessive speeds. The passengers in the vehicle were causing annoyance to other people in the town by shouting stuff out at them.
There was a fear that the driver had been drinking. So we responded to the call and we were given its last known location.
Frida and Damien drive out the road where the car was last reported heading. They spot the car that fits the description and pull it over.
We can get that type of behaviour. Young person driving, trying to maybe show off or whatever, especially maybe with passengers in the vehicle.
How are things? Can you step out of the car, please? Have you your licence with you?
Yeah.
Have you been drinking tonight?
No.
You haven't?
No.
You do a breath test?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll do a little breath test here and see, right? There's been complaints about your driving through the town. It's been all over the road.
I asked them to provide a breath specimen into the alco test machine.
Keep going till I say stop. Keep going. That's it. Okay, back 0. All right.
He passed that test, but I then had to question him about his driving and the number of complaints we had received. He seemed to have been blank to what the problem was, although his friends were having a good laugh at his expense for being stopped.
Okay, what happens now, we're going to take a few details off you, all right?
Yeah.
Because I said there's numerous complaints coming in there.
Was it speeding or?
Oh, just dangerous driving.
Just dangerous driving, yeah.
On the roads and things like that.
Frida and Damien often come across young drivers driving like this.
Probably one of the main problems with young lads driving with their friends in situations like that, where they're being egged on or they're showing off. One of the main problems is they have this attitude that nothing's going to happen to me. They just don't care what they meet on the next corner.
They don't take into account that they're in a built-up area and that basically a person could step off a footpath or into their way, and they don't realise that if they actually strike the person or they cause a collision of any sort, that they will be at fault. We give them the advice there. It may not have a lasting effect. It may only last that night, you know. But again, there's only so much we can really do. Hopefully, he might take from it. At the end of the day, he only has one life, and please God, he will heed the advice.
Right. Straight on with you, all right?
Frida and Damien asked the driver to produce his insurance and licence at the station within 10 days. The driver does so. It's 1:25 a.m. Gardaí Andy Cosgrove and Martin Carroll have been called out to the M1 near Drogheda. Objects have been thrown from a motorway bridge onto oncoming traffic.
Just a report there from the control room that the youths were throwing stuff from the bridge. Now, it seems to be that There's a collision has occurred. The report now is minor enough, but we'll go out that far anyway and see what's happened.
We made our way out anyway, and the lady was pulled in on the hard shoulder. Lucky enough, there was no major damage to her vehicle, but she told us that while travelling north, something was thrown from the flyover, which she obviously couldn't avoid.
A traffic cone thrown from the overpass landed in front of the car. The driver couldn't avoid it, but luckily for her, it didn't hit her windscreen.
Because I had seen the figures on the bridge, on the overhead passage, I guessed they were throwing things, so I was pretty scared. And it bounced, some of the things I could see out the passenger window bouncing along beside me. And then when I saw the bollard, I just thought this is going to cause an accident.
The cone is stuck firmly under the car. Andy can't get it free.
This lady did very well. She seen figures on top of the bridge and adjusted her speed. And right, the unfortunate thing was she hit the cone, but she was safe and could pull in safe.
He struggles to remove it.
The cone was well jammed in underneath. Obviously, it landed in front of her vehicle. She drove over it. It then wedged itself. I think it was under the sump of the vehicle, so it couldn't be removed, and obviously the vehicle couldn't be driven. We then had to jack the vehicle up to a sufficient height that we could get in underneath and remove the cone.
He eventually gets it free.
Over the last while, we have had previous reports of items being thrown from the flyovers at various points off the motorway. It's an unfortunate side effect of just the way Ireland has got now. Unfortunately, it's getting more common. It's an issue that's constantly raised to the traffic court, just to keep an eye on the flyovers. If anybody is seen on them, just to keep an eye on them.
There are reports coming in at different times now. People are throwing.
There have been reports of more objects being thrown onto the M1 from overpasses since this incident happened.
Yeah, we actually saw as we were coming up. You can see where the stuff was all scattered. See how the cars have hit it. But as I say, you wouldn't go too far with that wedged underneath.
It's numbskulls that are doing this, like, you know, idiots, because you know, there's people going about their business, a motorway, the height of the bridge. If that had been thrown off the bridge as she was much closer, straight through the windscreen, she could have been killed stone dead. If she tried to avoid the cone and hit somebody else, you know, you're looking at a major incident on the motorway. And these boys that think it's a bit of crack are walking away scot-free.
It's only a matter of time, I believe, that if it continues, that eventually, on the laws of averages, something's going to go terribly wrong at some stage. It's going to come through a windscreen and seriously hurt or kill somebody in the vehicle.
Next week on Traffic Blues, a car takes off at a checkpoint in Drogheda. A woman using a mobile phone is pulled over.
Yeah, the offence is actually for holding the phone.
And a driver in Donegal is stopped for speeding.
Do you think you should be driving at all? If you're going to drive like that?
More law enforcement on our roads next week in Traffic Blues at 8:30 here on 1. Coming up next...